Hello, and welcome to Fluency Forward 25, the podcast series conducted by the Advanced English Skills Improvement Unit of Royal College. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Dhawal Kamath. He served as the Chief Revenue Officer for Simple Works for the year 2024. Further, he's working as a consultant and freelancer. In addition to that, he's a known expert in the industries of ICT and market analysis. Thank you for giving us this opportunity, sir. And now, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. I'm more than happy to join this session. And if I could give some guidance, some inputs, which I have gathered over my 35-year long career, I'll be more than happy. Just to give you an idea, I before I joined Simple Works, I was a co-founder of a company called Miles Software. That company was into software for asset and wealth management. We came into existence in 1992, and over a period of time, we acquired around 350 customers across the world. Uh, we sold off our company in 2019. God help us, just before COVID, and we were able to. So I was the last co-founding member to leave in 2024, right? And during this period, I held various positions in Miles Software, right from being starting my career as a developer to a system analyst to a product head to a revenue officer to being the CEO of the Philippines entity. That was the last position I held in Miles Software, where I was the CEO of the Philippines entity. Right. That's how my career has spanned. All in all, completely technology driven. Over a period of time, I moved from technology to also on the client engagement side. That's how I got into the sales and marketing and all the other parts. Right, when the interaction with customers started happening. That's what it is.
Great. So, that is our special guest, Mr. Dhawal Kamath. And thank you for your introduction. You have a stellar background, sir. And as for our first real question of this topic, it comes to language and your career breakthroughs. So in the tech
Mhm.
industry, communication would you say is an important skill? And how would you say mastering English influence your career
Mhm.
trajectory and the opportunities that opened up for you?
Sure. See, as you know, most of the IT industry works on English as the communication language. But let me also tell you upfront, right? Whether you go to Sri Lanka, whether you go to India, whether you go to Europe, in fact, Europe itself, there are a lot of people who don't talk English properly. But English, I think, as far as all of us have to take one thing from here is if you treat English not as a language, but a means to communicate your idea, it automatically solves a lot of issues. So, what I really mean by this is you can actually compare your English like a programming language where you're trying to communicate when you program. You write a code in a certain manner to communicate an idea to the processor to do some things. Same thing, English happens that way. So let me take you back, right? I grew up in India in a city like Mumbai. I belong to a family where nobody speaks English in my house. My parents did not speak English, but they knew the importance of how English was growing in the late 1980s. That's how old I am. Is that they, even though they did not understand, they put me to an English school. And while they meant good, it also means that you have to struggle to go through that English as far as because you had nobody else to teach you that. Now, because of that, what happens is while you're put into the ring of fire, there are certain ways which things happen. Now, initially, when you start learning English or when you start hearing English, the biggest problem people who come from a different native language background is by definition, when you hear something in a different language, forget about English, in any other language, we have the tendency of converting that to our native language for processing it or thinking about it, generating an answer, and then trying to communicate back in English. while this happens very fast, right? Your brain processes it very fast. It is tiring. Now, the only way you could take care of that is by a step by step approach. You cannot learn English in one day. I think the biggest thing which I had to overcome, right, in my life was not being afraid of being wrong. I think most of the time, all of us tend not to ask a question or say something with the fear of being wrong or being misunderstood or being judged. I think, but the whole point there is the idea should not be about how would I look when I ask this question, or if I don't understand, or if I ask somebody to repeat it. But the idea should be what can I learn out of this? And, I have a phrase which I keep on telling young people when I talk to them. And if I ask them this question, or anybody has a question in what I communicated. Normally, people don't tend to raise their hands and ask a question. And this is what I tell people. Do you know what is the dumbest question? For me, the dumbest question is the one which was never asked because it never left you any more wiser. You kept your mouth shut and did not learn anything new. So, coming back, right? Coming back, if you treat English not as something as an adversary, but a means to communicate what you are thinking and start working with English in the same manner. It's no different than learning a new programming language, right? Yes, all of them might be based on English, but everyone has its syntax. That's how the programming languages work, right? So if you take English and instead of sounding too advanced, if you focus on communicating the idea, I think a lot of issues get solved. So I think for me, the idea was to communicate in smaller words what I wanted to say that helped me. And obviously, there were teachers. The one good thing about which I did, and I think which took me some time to do it because it's not easy, is to go and tell or raise my hand in front of the whole class and say, I did not understand what you said. I think the fear of being judged or the fear of being wrong is what takes away a lot of learning from our end. So for me, that learning English will only increase your visibility, your way to communicate, because when you talk to global teams, now the world is into global connections. Uh, the only common language which we know across each other is English, right? So I think that's what for me, English is a means of communication, but not the means to an end. It's about communicating your idea.
That is some keen insight, sir. And moving on to our next point, would you agree that English serves as a basis in the industries of IT and technology? As even, for example, when you look at coding and program creation and software creation, coding languages are done using English as a basis to create them.
Yeah, I think, see, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but that's how the industry works right now, isn't it? But I mean, all of us know, right? Even if you write the code in English, the code is translated into ones and zeros, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it is.
It is, right? So basically, there is somebody who is translating whatever you wrote into a machine language, which is not English. The only thing which has happened is over this years, English was the deemed common language across boundaries, isn't it? And that's because most of the world was ruled by the Britishers. And by the way, I don't know whether you're aware, the English which the Britishers speak, the English which is spoken in Australia, New Zealand, and the United States is completely different, isn't it?
Yes.
But when you write a programming language, It all comes back to the same thing. Now, I'm not sure if you know, but in British English, color is written as COLOUR, whereas in American English it is COLOR. So even if you use Word and you type something, if you have set your settings to British English and you write COLOR, it will tell you it's wrong. It will give you an autocorrect. Even spellings like organization and organization in British English is written as SA, whereas in American English it is written as
Yes.
ZA, right?
Yes.
So, what do you call Z in Sri Lanka? You call it Z or you call it Z?
There isn't a specific one, but most people would say Z.
Z, right? So that's an American English.
But individuals from like older generations would
They call
say
it
Z.
Z.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. So what I'm trying to come at is while English could be the most common language across the world, the IT industry, because it developed in a country like America, which only spoke English because that's their common language, we have all got all the processors which were converting your programming language into machine language were all written in English. Nothing stops from a programming language to be written in Sinhalese or even in an Indian language, right? Because finally, all it has to do is convert it to the machine language. What I'm trying to tell here is most of the time, all of us are scared of speaking in English, but when we write something in English, you and me understand the same thing. So the programming language is much easier for all of us because all you have to do is learn the syntax as far as programming is concerned. Now, if you take it to the second level, where not just programming, but I have to convey my idea, right? As a programmer, as somebody who works for an IT company, you are not working in isolation. You are supposed to communicate, you are supposed to debate, you have to convey your ideas. That's where the communication part of English comes in. So I would suggest rather than working on the phonetics of English, right? Of how do I pronounce a word, if you are able to communicate the idea better in simple words, that takes care of most of the problems. If everybody knows programming, right, I can do programming in a simple code or I could write very complex code. Now let's take an example of programming languages like C++ plus plus, and you compare that to Java and you compare that to Python. Anybody who writes code in Python will think it's not complicated. It's plain English. But if you write it in C++ plus plus or you write it in Java, even for small things, you have to write very complicated code. But the outcome is still the same. What I'm trying to get at with this is English, when you talk about English as somebody of for programming it doesn't matter because once you learn the syntax and now your editors are much more sharper which they actually tell you the syntax. If you are able to handle that, I think what more has to be the focus is on an IT industry because you work across multiple teams is how I can use English to communicate, and the simple the better. I think it goes back to the same thought, right? When English is not your first language, especially at home,
Yes.
our brains are tuned to the idea that when somebody talks to me in English, I'll convert it into my brain. You don't even have to tell it to convert. Your brain automatically converts it into your local language, which you have grown up learning, processes it, creates the answer, and gives you back the answer in English. Now that itself, see, there is no direct translation for every Sinhalese word into English, isn't
Yes.
it?
And yes, there is. There isn't
Correct.
in. Yes, you are
Exactly.
correct.
Because our languages, right, the Southeast Asian languages or Asian languages are much more have much more depth than the English language. Right? We have phonetics. Certain characters written in a certain way have a different annotation, a different pronunciation. That's why there is no direct conversion of our local language to English and vice versa. And that's where majority of our problem starts happening.
Yes, I'd agree that the languages are different. Even the most basic aspects of the alphabets not having direct corresponding translations.
Exactly. Right? So because of that, it becomes little bit difficult for people who are non-native English speakers to be good at it. But I'll give you one simple thing to do. It's not about what grade of English you know. It's about you understanding the basics of a language, whether it is English or any other language. Tomorrow, if you want to learn any other language, the idea is, can I communicate my thoughts in a simple and effective manner so that the other person can understand, right? That's what language is.
Yes, I
And
agree completely.
yeah, and trust me one thing, my friend. I have seen a lot of leaders using language in a room full of 500 people, using a language which only a 10 of them can understand. The idea of that should be that I communicate my response in such a way that even if there is the lowest common denominator of a person, my idea should be conveyed to him, right? So the learning approach to English should be simplifying it rather than complicating it. Does that answer your question? And when you start doing these small sentences at a time, create a group amongst which you can talk to each other where there is no judgment, and you start doing small logic descriptions or logic communication rather than complicated sentences, your brain after a while will automatically stop the conversion or the translation into native language backward and forward. And that is the time your thought process will become more and more clear, and more than thought process. See, I'm sure everybody's thought process is clear. Is the anxiety of whether I can speak the right words, which takes away most of the communication of the idea. So, if you can, and even if you are not able to communicate properly at first instance, tell the people that, if you're not able to understand, I will answer again. And if you don't understand from someone, be brave enough to ask it. Because again, if you don't ask, you will never know. Yeah. So again, if you treat English as a communication, means of communication rather than, a status symbol that, oh, if I don't know English, I'm not considered well, or if I don't speak English well, nobody
It,
will value me. No.
it, knowing English should not be a means to an end, is what you're saying.
But exactly. English is a means of communication. It doesn't justify or doesn't add or subtract your value as a person, right? But it's the same way. If I have a brilliant idea, but if I'm not able to communicate, whether it is in English or whether it is in Sinhalese or whether it is in an Indian language or Spanish or Chinese, that idea doesn't become valuable. So, as people, if you start, so it's like writing a wrong code, isn't it? If you write a wrong code, you will get a wrong output.
Yes.
Same
Oh,
way, language is that way. Yeah.
yes. Yes. That's truly some great insights. And building
Sure.
upon a point you brought up earlier,
Yeah.
as you said, English is a common language. Many
Yeah.
countries all across the world have learned it due to the occupation of Britain and so forth. Many
Yeah.
countries and across many generations have learned English. So,
Yeah.
especially in the world of technology, when people can use the internet and collaborate across world, across countries, time zones, and different cultures completely, how would you describe learning English as a way to help expand one's efforts, find out new people, find out about the world, talk to new people, gain experience from ways they could not imagine from simply just being in their home country?
Right. Right. I think, see, what has happened is suddenly during COVID, right? people suddenly started realizing that we are more connected than ever before. Even when I was working for Miles Software, every time you wanted to do a sale, you had to go to a customer. And let me be very honest, right? When you communicate to people in person, there is always that warmth between two people when you talk to each other in person.
The small things such as the body language and the
Exactly.
mannerisms that get through to a
Right.
person.
Yeah. But what has happened after COVID? We all have become distinctly connected, right? We are distant, and a lot of times people are there or they are not there. We don't know. But that also become as an opportunity because now I was on a a session because I do consulting. I was on a session with a company for disclosure purposes. I can't disclose the company's name, but there were people from Mauritius, from South Africa, from Nigeria, from Ghana, and from Qatar. And there were people from India and Philippines. Can you imagine the potpourri of people who are there?
Many distinct regions. That's two continents there alone.
Correct. And most importantly, all of them talk with a different English accent. If you
E-
speak to a
e-
Nigerian,
Even
his
the
accent. Sorry?
this is even the people from similar regions such as Ghana and South
Yeah, Ghana and
Africa.
Nigeria just beside each other, right? Even Mauritius and South Africa is just beside each other. They are in the Indian Ocean, isn't it? But their accents are completely different. Now, but the good part is you when you and I think we are in a better situation right now because you have tools like when you talk on a Zoom call or when you talk on a G Meet or you talk on Microsoft Teams, all of it has a transcriber. And if you go back to my previous statement, I might pronounce a word in a different manner, but when I write it down, and if all of us read, and if we know a little bit of English, all the meaning for all of us will be the same, isn't it?
Yes.
So, so what has happened is somewhere that COVID situation and the advance in technology with the transcription as well as your chat GPT and everything, even your Google Translate, right? It's phenomenal. I have seen certain tools which translate into languages at runtime. It's not that it's post, right? That I type it and then it gives. No, no, it's doing it, transcribing it in a different language runtime while it is going on. So while that English becomes the normal bridge, right? And let's think of it this way, right? English now has become the means of communication across continents across the world. But are you aware in China people don't speak much English? They don't. They have their own stuff and everything. They do speak English, but they don't speak much English. But doesn't mean
Would you
that that country is
would,
not
would you
expanding.
say this is part in due to the policies to
Yes,
like separate itself from the world using their own
correct.
softwares, their own infrastructure?
Yes. While that is the case, what I'm trying to say is that's how they have built their ecosystem, isn't it? Do you think they are programming in English? No, they're not programming in English. They're programming in Chinese. So, going back to my first statement, right? When you program, you might be using the English language for syntax, but finally it's getting converted into machine language. So that's what they're doing. Again, coming back. Yes, cross cultural English being the most common language, it's very easy for you to communicate between two teams. Yes, while you're speaking, you might sound a little bit ambiguous, but that also means what I said before. The most simple you keep your language, the better you are able to communicate your idea across the room. When I say across the room, means it could also mean across the Zoom call, right? If you keep your words simple and rather than sounding very intelligent, if you decide to communicate your idea in simple words, I think that's what it is. I could I could use a word called flabbergasted, or I could use a word saying I was astonished or I was surprised. All the words are the same, isn't it? They all communicate the
Yes,
same. But
they
if I
are.
use the word, yeah, if I use the word flabbergasted, 60% of native speaking language speaking people will not even understand what I said. There are a lot of words which even with Today, I may not understand, but that's okay. I would note that word and go and find out what it means. Nowadays, learning is so simple. It's just putting a question onto Google or nowadays ChatGPT, isn't it? It just
And
breaks it down for you.
that would lead me to our next question.
Sure.
And as you say, tech has its own vocabulary, but in today's modern age, with all the resources a person could have on hand, with just an
Mhm.
internet connection and a cellular device, how would you say that people could learn to learn English? What kind of advice would you think would benefit them, as well as how they could understand more concepts and how to progress in their careers?
Sure, sure. So let me tell you as I've been saying across, right? English should be treated exactly like a technical tool. You don't need to master it before you start using it. As you keep on using it, you start becoming very good at it. So you improve by using it frequently, simply, and intentionally, right? Isn't it? So let's take, our countries play cricket. If I have to be good at a particular shot, all I have to do is keep on practicing it. Yes, I might miss something, but I'll keep on practicing it. Not only cricket, you take anything in your life, if you want to be good at something, you keep on practicing it. On a daily basis, little by little, you keep on improving it. Again, prioritize your clarity and avoid complex language. Focus on the message, not the words. If your idea is sound and your explanation is structured, your communication will succeed. The way to learn this would be every time you hear a very complicated word, note it down and find out the easiest way to communicate that same feeling. It will do two things. It will make you understand the word, but it will also make you understand the literal meaning of it, which will make sure next time you have to use that word, depending upon the room in which you are, you can either use the complicated word or you can use the straight language word. See, let's be clear. Somewhere it has gone into our heads that if I'm not able to communicate in English, people will not think highly of me. And that's something which happens in countries like ours, where for some reason or the other, where the history is history, that if you don't know English, you're not good enough. Yes, but in being in tech industry and being in the overall tech industry across the world, you need to know English. So you go by chunks and chunks, gather all the data from everywhere. And I'll tell you the way I learned English. As I said, I did not have my parents know English. My parents did not know English.
Yes. And you mentioned you went to an English school, but
I went to an English school.
unlike us today, you went in a time without many of these technological advancements.
Nothing, right? There was nothing. So the only way to do that was I used to take a newspaper and read it. And at that point of time, if I did not understand a word, I had a dictionary beside me. I would go and search the dictionary because dictionary has those words alphabetically sorted, right? I would go and search that word. Oh, now I understand the meaning of this word. And most important, right? After understanding that meaning of that word or understanding that word or listening to that word, try and use it in your next conversation. When you start using it in your next conversation, it'll start becoming a part of your vocabulary, which is direct and which will not need translation.
So you would describe your process as when you were growing up as a trial and error of some sorts.
Yes, that's the only way, right? It's also programming. You write a code, you see the output. Oh, the output needs to be modified. Okay, I'll go and change. Oh, now the correct output has come. It's a trial and error. All of us have to go through this process. And why only that? Do you think people who stay in English speaking countries know English when they are born? No, that's a process, right? And the only way they become fluent in that, because that's the environment they have, where everybody around them is speaking in that same language. That's how we learned Sinhalese in Sri Lanka. That's how we learned Hindi in India or my mother tongue Marathi in my house, isn't it? It's the constant use of that language. So if you want to become proficient, and there are so many tools available which are free of cost, open chat GPT and start talking to it, isn't it? You can always have a conversation. You can tell chat GPT, oh, I want to have a conversation with you where you work with me where you can correct my understanding or my English if you deem so, but please keep the language simple, which can be understood by anyone. If you give this simple prompt to ChatGPT, it will talk to you. So try it. In fact, we are in a better situation right now to learn English than anywhere else. I hope everybody knows ChatGPT can now type your answers also, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So one more thing, while we are focusing on English, let me tell you, in my 35 years of my career, I have seen people who get into a room full of people and speak in English or any other language. And I think English is where we have most of the problems. They come in, they speak in a language and use such hard words or such, heavy words that while they leave the room, they are the only people who think they did a good job, whereas 80% of the room did not even understand what they said. Now, as a person who gets on a stage to communicate somebody, if I'm not able to communicate my message effectively with my audience, how does it make my English better than yours? No, my English might be better or I use better words, but I was not able to communicate effectively. It's my failure, not the audience's failure, right?
Right. Your perspective is that English is not about using big words. The
Yeah,
main objective, as with all languages, is to simply get your ideas and thoughts across.
perfect. Deal with English like that, isn't it? And I think all of us will be good. And trust me, it's not a big deal. Don't look at why only English. Tomorrow you can learn Chinese or even Indian or even Spanish or French. It doesn't matter. Just keep it simple. Yeah.
Moving on, sir, what would your advice be for anyone aspiring to get into the field of technology and or just in general for people how from your experience could now learn English with these new
Mhm.
resources and how ICT can also help in that way?
See, again, as I said, right, all of us, if you're just programmers, you could sit beside a wall and write your code, and your code will communicate the questions and the answers to the processor, and you can get your output. But with that, you'll only remain a programmer. If you want to grow bigger in your life or want to grow bigger in your stature or your career, you ought to become managers, leaders. If you choose to be in front of the customer, all of this means I have to communicate in English, right? If you're working in the local industry in Sri Lanka, it's very easy. You could speak in Sinhalese and it will be fine. But nowadays, all of us have aspirations of working across the world, and it's a multicultural world right now. So for me, as I said, and as I iterated, you form a group, right? And what you're doing is really good. I must actually appreciate what you doing it as an initiative is to get these people on a platform where they can talk to each other, where they become each other's. Find a buddy, right? All of us did not know English right from day one. Find a buddy with
Yes,
whom you can communicate, make mistakes without being laughed at. I think if you create that safe space within yourselves, as far as English is concerned. See, while I mentioned that you can talk to Chat GPT and get, but it's still not a conversation. You don't feel like a conversation. You need a person in front of you to feel like a conversation, isn't it? Otherwise, this podcast you could have done it asking Chat GPT also, isn't it? The reason you have a real person in places because that has to feel that connection,
that's true. That's very true,
right?
sir.
So you form that group, you form that communication with your two people who are inclined to the learning process, right? With the same minded people where I know that my and your goal is the same. We both want to learn English. One thing we will promise each other, we will not tease each other or put down each other because I said something wrong. The idea of the people in the group should be to make sure that all of us get wiser or better together. So I would say with all the resources you have, yes, read. All of us watch movies, right? All of us watch English movies. Watch those English movies with captions on, subtitles on, even in English. Don't watch a movie with subtitles in Sinhalese. Watch it in English, subtitles in English. Yes, you might have to rewind again, but again watch it. Because when you start reading it and hearing those things again and again and again, you will learn faster. See, nowadays newspapers are gone. Nobody reads newspapers anymore. Previously, we had newspapers, right? But at least I would also say one more thing. Watch a Sinhalese movie with English captions. Watch any local movie which you learn understand as a language, but you start with English captions or subtitles. That automatically tells your brain new words which you can use for communicating something in your native language back in English. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right?
Find
Yep.
some sort of medium that brings the two languages together.
And whatever you're comfortable, see, because not one idea will not fit all, isn't it? All of us have a different coping mechanism. We all of us are different. So everyone has to find their own. So I give you multiple ideas. Read newspapers, form a group, watch movies with subtitles on, even watch a local movie with English subtitles on. And trust me, a lot of times I'm able to understand a lot of. So a few of my friends, they don't understand my local language, which is Hindi, right? They don't understand Indian languages. But if they watch a movie with me, they would watch a movie with English subtitles. Now, well, while they are watching the movie, they are reading the subtitles, and that's what they're trying to understand. But when I started reading those English subtitles, it automatically made me understand how would I communicate a native language sentence in English, right?
Right.
So that's another way of doing it. And then you have ChatGPT, you have Google Translate. It does a lot of stuff. But for me, the best thing is to find a partner with whom you can talk without being judged. When you start doing that, see, don't worry about the accent. We can't let go of our accents, right? It'll happen over a period of time. Don't focus on accent at day one. Focus on simple, correct English on day one. Accents will happen automatically. I could technically use an English accent, an Australian accent, and a British accent because I've talked with all of them. I can also have a Filipino accent, by the way. I know how Filipinos talk English, right? For 10 years. But the point is not that. The point is I still talk in normal English. Just simple word communication. Yeah. Yes. Any
Yes.
questions you have more for me?
No, I would say that covers up all the points.
Perfect. So thank you. And it
Thank
was
you,
great.
sir.
I hope I've answered your questions.
So,
Right?
thank you, Mr. Dhawal Kamath, for participating in this session. Your keen insights will provide great help to our listeners and participants, and I hope that someone listening to this will take something from this and use this to better themselves and improve for their future.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to me also.